Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive! This week, I kick off a 10-part series talking about the individual Pantheons in Scion 2nd Edition's Hero Core Book. Now, this topic was voted on by my Twitter followers. If you would like to contribute to future polls, please, my Twitter link and a link to my Patreon are in the description below. Any support is welcome, and also, following me on Twitter means you get to participate in the polls I will put up there periodically to determine my next topic. Now, with that said, I'm going to be starting the series in the order they're presented in the books, which means I'm starting with the Aesir. Now, one thing I want to understand is I'm not going to be going over each deity presented in the Pantheon, and I'm not going to really be going about the mechanics of it. I'm going to be focusing more on the setting elements, where I know differences from the real-world depictions of the various deities. I will bring those up. But in this instance, they did their research pretty well. So sit back, relax, and enjoy as we talk about the Aesir of Asgard and Midgard. So, when you look at the Aesir, you have to look at their origins. They spawned in the same area at the same time as the Jotnar, the giants. And, of course, in a resource-poor area, the two sides inevitably went to war. And ultimately, Odin and his brothers and sisters killed Ymir and built Midgard, made Midgard from his remains. And the remaining Jotun, the remaining giants, they fled to what would become Jotunheim. And the Aesir followed them. And they ended up being forced to make a choice. To endure torment from the Aesir, constantly attacking them, until such time as situations changed and the Jotun would be able to engage and fight the Aesir to victory, or to make peace and marry into the Aesir. Some took one option, some took the other. It wasn't a case of all the Jotun took the same choice. Then, at some point, another group of gods emerged. The Vannir. And these gods came with great halls and much in the way of just more advanced techniques than the Aesir had. And they lived at peace for a time. Then Odin found that they had the secret of a magic called Sadir, a magic that allowed them to deal with fate itself. And so, rather than try to negotiate for it, Odin made the call to try and take it by force, which spawned a war. And basically the war taught them one thing. Neither side would ever be able to beat the other. They could gain advantage over the other for a time, but then it would always sway back. And so they ended up making a peace. A lasting peace, and it was at this point that the Titans emerged and attacked. And this leads to the setting of, as we know it, Scion. And one of the interesting elements is that you can kind of see the Titanic touch in some of the giants and some of the Jotun, because some of them actually did marry into the Aesir. A notable example is Skadi, the goddess of winter. And you have to remember, when you're dealing with the Norse mythology, there's a lot of misconceptions, thanks to a very erroneous depiction of what some people think that they would look like. Thor, for example, the god of thunder, rain, and crops. Yeah. He's an agricultural deity who happens to bring thunder. He also has red hair and a lush red beard. Kind of makes that time when he pretended to be Freya to get his hammer back kind of even more amusing, doesn't it? But, the thing is, a lot of mythology, a lot of the views we've gotten depict Loki as a treacherous entity. Honestly, he's more impulsive and a trickster god. He's also a fire god. And no, he's not the son of Odin. He's not even an adopted son of Odin. He's the sworn blood brother to Odin. Right? We all know where the dead who fall in battle go. Sort of. Half of them go to Valhalla. The other half go to Freya's Hall. Hell gets those who die of disease and old age. But those who die from accident, or basically anything not disease, old age, or in battle, go to Helgafjell, a mountain that the living can't see, and that they get rest, but not true happiness, and eventually they're let walk down the mountain to be reborn into the family lines, with scars they'd had in life showing up as birthmarks on their new selves, with certain idiosyncrasies from old age showing up as yearnings from in their youth. And frequently they're renamed after who most people think they most resemble from the histories of their families. And, this is the thing. You have to look at the Norse mythology as it is something that, on some level, we all kind of know. But on another level, there's a lot more to it, and things have been altered, shall we say. Let's talk Hel. She has servants, of course. But, she is the goddess of the realm of the dead. No, not goddess of the dead. Goddess of the realm of the dead. It's said that she is served by two servants, idleness and sloth. And the only dish they serve is hunger. But, you have that image. The woman who's half live and vibrant, the other half a rotting cadaver. And that's actually pretty accurate. And they kept that element into Scion. But Scion is about more than just the gods and the realms. Yes, you have Hel's realm, which is the abode of the doomed. You have Helgafjell. You have Valhalla and Freya's Hall, Sessurumnir, the Hall of Seats. And you also have to remember that you are dealing with something that has a living religion still being practiced. The stave temples are actually being rebuilt in places like Iceland and Norway and Finland. Old things are being rediscovered in the real world. And you have the people who follow this religion, who have passed the stories on orally where they could, written down where they could as well, keeping what little bit of this religion is still there alive. And that's important. Now, when you start talking about them from a game perspective, in the perspective of Scion, they have two virtues: fatalism and audacity. Fatalism is, of course, yeah, we're all gonna die, but, it's gotta happen sometime. It's the sort of Russian idea of, it happens. And they've accepted that fate is going to play its hand. That ultimately they are just the tools of the Nornir, the Norns, the Norse fates. But at the same time, opposing fatalism is audacity. The idea that, yeah, my fate's written, so what? Maybe I can't change it, but you know what? People are gonna sing about how I met my fate. And it's just the sort of, I don't care that something bad's gonna happen to me. It's gonna happen to me anyway. Why not take the risk? I'm either going to live because it wasn't my time, or I'm going to die because that's how I was going to die anyway. Type attitude. Now, with regards to the other pantheons, the Aesir generally get along well with the Tuatha De Danann. It's probably because there's been a lot of interchange between them. And in fact, Odin studied with Agma for a time. Or was it Agma studied with Odin for a time? You kind of don't know. What we do know is that there is similarities between the Futhark and the Ogam runes that indicate that there was inspiration from one source or the other. Note that is a real world thing. There's some debate about whether the Ogam runes came from, or the Ogam writing came from interaction with Norse travelers, or whether the Futhark runes, the older of the rune sets, were derived from trade with the Celtic peoples. The Diva of India, they don't really get along with too well. It's more because the Diva can't tell the difference between the Aesir and the Jotnar. Yeah. It kind of happens when you kind of marry giants into your bloodlines. They kind of work into your history. So yeah, the Deva and the Aesir don't really get along too well. And ultimately, the Aesir just can't understand the Netjer of Egypt. To them, they just make no sense. And that is our look at the Aesir. Next week, I will move on to the Diva of South Asia. Namely, the Diva of India, Thailand, yada yada. So until then, I'd like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming.